Well, hello and welcome to the Wine Access Unfiltered podcast. If you have been following me on the socials this past year of 2025, it has been the year of a grape that I admittedly have sort of been not escaping, but narrowly avoiding for all the wrong reasons. And it's a grape that I feel really passionate about, especially as of late, because we know this grape as sort of California's grape. It's the unsung, unheralded hero of California. And it's a grape that's been in California and in Napa Valley for a very, very long time. I've been doing some work with a brand called Ravenswood over this past year, which was one of the great original growers and makers of this grape. And over the last few decades, we've seen it sort of ebb and flow. But I'm happy to say it's back. And I'm really excited that it's back because, believe it or not, I like Zinfandel. I sort of equate it to like the grape. It's sort of like pizza for me. I know some of you are going to balk at that, but I don't love pizza in the way that people love pizza. And Zinfandel is sort of that way for me. When it's good, I really love it, but I'm not craving it, if you know what I mean. In any case, today's episode is going to be all about Zinfandel, California, heritage things, and also harvest because we are here in October. It is just about the tail end of the season. And I brought a friend on the show with me who I think you guys are going to love. I know a lot of you out there are already familiar with his name, but maybe you're not familiar with who he is as a person, which I think is way more cool and way more interesting. And he's just the freaking best. And I'm so excited that he took the time out of his schedule to join us today. You've probably seen his last name on a few labels. The name is Morisoli. It's been featured on a ton of fantastic wines over the past few years. Did I say few? I mean, decades and decades of wine that has been produced from his family vineyard. And he just started releasing a few years ago their own wine, but they've also been producing a single block Zinfandel, which is why I thought Chris Morisoli was the perfect person to have on the show today. Plus, he knows a thing or two about podcasts. He's the host of the 9-1 Wine podcast that I have been a guest on. Love it. I'm here for it. Chris, I love that you're in the vineyard. How are you doing?
Awesome. Amanda, thanks. That was a really cool lead up to hopefully an exciting conversation. I hope I can produce for you guys. But love what you're doing. You are such a rock star in the wine industry, and just from the point of view of bringing young people in and championing wine, and especially all of these kind of new or nuanced wines, unique things in Napa and Sonoma and all over the wine world, really is super special. And I know I appreciate, and a lot of people appreciate what you're doing. So cheers to that. And thank you.
Please. No, the pleasure is mine. We can't just, fawn over each other this entire episode. I know we have mutual love.
We have work to do.
You are, I always get this wrong, third, fourth, fifth generation Napa Valley?
Fifth actually. Fifth. So yeah, my great grandpa Rocco came over from Italy, actually Switzerland. They're Swiss Italian. In 1880s, got married in 1893, and then they settled here at Nebom Lane, which is where we are. You can see Mount St. John in the background. They lived here in 1902 and started farming. So, and then they had Plinio, the second generation. And then we lost our cool Swiss Italian names. We went Phil, Gary, and Chris really quickly, became Americanized. So.
I love it. And so you are fifth generation. You've continued the family tradition, which is really kind of an amazing feat and not easy to do. Something that I know that, a lot of wine growing regions are struggling with right now. Mm-hmm. But in addition to the podcast, you also do a handful of other things. You might be the coolest person in Napa Valley.
Oh man,
I know our friend Josh Phelps might be mad at me for saying that, but you fly helicopters, you grow grapes, you make wine, you host a podcast. You work as a firefighter?
I do that as well. Anything that involves driving pieces of equipment or cruising around in helicopters, fire trucks, or tractors. So yeah, I love it. It's fun. Keeps me busy. Keeps me out of trouble. So yeah.
That officially makes you the coolest person in Napa Valley. Well, we're super grateful for all of that. And then tell me about the Morisoli vineyard, because this is sort of an iconic vineyard. We think of the great Grand Cru sites of Napa Valley. Certainly Morisoli is up there. It's, as I mentioned in the intro, it's been on a ton of wines that you would recognize as a single vineyard designate. Although that didn't start until the 90s?
Correct. Yeah. From really 1902 through probably the 70s and 80s, we sold a lot of the grapes during the Prohibition era. They went to Christian Brothers or Beaulieu Vineyard for sacramental wine. So you can imagine there was a lot of new Catholics at that time. People had to get their wine somewhere. So that's where a lot of our grapes were sold. And then into the 50s, 60s, 70s, a lot of it actually went to Gallo, the co-op. A lot of these wineries that would just kind of put together, big blends and would get out to wine lovers that way. And then kind of in the late 80s, single vineyards started to become a lot more popular. And really, if you can think back to, 80s, 90s, there was not a lot of single vineyard designation. You had Heights Martha's, Three Palms, Tokelon, of course, but not a lot. So Whitehall Lane did the first single vineyard designate from our Cabernet Sauvignon in 1990. And it scored well, and the Wine Spectator loved it. And then kind of spurred a lot of other wineries along to make a single vineyard also for Morisoli. And now we sell to probably about 12 different wineries that put the name on the label. So it's a great way to share some local Rutherford history with wine lovers.
It's super cool. And then you guys decided a few years ago that you wanted to make your own wine from the vineyard. You hadn't done that previously. So when did that start?
So 2018. So I had been in the Army up until 2018. I started doing that in 2006, flying medevac helicopters. I flew medevac in Alaska, Hawaii, Honduras, Iraq, Afghanistan, and then coming back a few years ago, of course, needed something else exciting to do. So we decided to make wine and started in 18 with a Cabernet Sauvignon from kind of the best spot, which we felt was the best spot in the vineyard, which coincidentally is right next to, just a beam, the old vines that you saw last time you were here. So, and I think that's one thing that's really cool about old vines, as we talk about that. When you find these old pre-Prohibition vineyards, they're really something special because they survived Prohibition. They survived 2 world wars, COVID, wine gluts and wine famines. And if they stayed there, that vineyard was really someone's favorite. They loved it and they wanted to keep it in the ground. So anywhere you see these old vineyards means that was probably some of the best land for growing grapes. It didn't get a lot of frost. It was able to survive, cold nights. And it was really popular with people. So I think that's one bit of history that is important to take with us as we're tasting, wine from old vineyards.
Yeah. And do you feel like, this idea of old vines, right? And I think this is important, especially when you're talking about Zinfandel, and there's so much Zinfandel out there that says like old vine Zinfandel. There really is no legal classification designation for old vine, right? Like I could literally make a wine tomorrow that said old vine Zinfandel and it could be 5 years old.
Exactly. Just like reserve on a wine bottle. What does it really mean? Anything, right?
Yep. Exactly. So like it doesn't necessarily mean anything like on any given Sunday if you're just shopping. But when it is actually old vine Zinfandel or old vine anything, it does make a difference. And I would be curious to know, since you have such great firsthand experience with old vines versus new vines, what are some of the differences between wines that are produced from old vines versus something that's newer?
Definitely. I think if we define the age requirement there, I think 50 years is a good kind of marker to call something old vines. I know that's what Larry Turley and Turley wine sellers do. They consider 50 years kind of to be the benchmark for something being called old vines. And I think that's pretty accurate. Also, something when it's pre-Prohibition, I think that also defines it even further as far as, age and pedigree of those vines. But I think what makes
pre-Prohibition's pretty old.
Yeah, right? we're talking, I don't know, 20 or 34. I don't know which part of Prohibition you call, but that defines it a little bit more specifically. But I think one thing that old vines do well is they balance themselves so well. They're almost sentient. They've been there forever. They have really deep roots. A lot of these tap roots for these old vines will go 30 feet, down to get to the water table. And they've been doing it for 100 years. So they know the water they need. They know the nutrients they need, and they don't produce more than really they know that they can balance. So a lot of the old vines in our vineyard, you'll see some are cropped, normally, and some just can only give out maybe 3 or 4 clusters. and that's just what it's capable of doing. We sucker them just like normal. We shoot thin. We crop. We don't actually crop thin at all because they just kind of balance naturally. Yeah. It's like they're grumpy. They're all a little different. It's like a bunch of old folks out there in the vineyard. They're
like, I am what I am.
They're set in their ways and they know what they're doing, and you got to respect that and leave them be. So.
Do you think at any point, like, these vines will just kind of, not wither away, but like give up? Yeah. Just be like, all right, it's been a good ride.
The greatest threat to our vines is me on the tractor. So as long as I don't hit them.
What do you fly helicopters, you drive anything and everything in Napa Valley, but you can't drive a tractor?
Yeah, maybe, you talk to my pops, he'll give you the straight scoop, but it's actually with the tight tolerances out there, man, I'm glad we don't fly helicopters with that tight of a tolerance, but it's literally inches. Sometimes you're brushing up against the side of these scraggly old vines, and if you hit it wrong and you yank it the wrong way, that whole vine comes out of the ground, and then I feel terrible for a week. My dad's angry with me, and everyone's sad. But these are little bits of history, and
no, it's true.
What's so cool to me is you can go back and you can look at that vine and you can almost see it through history. So it has all these kind of scraggly arms, and you can see each pruning decision and each cut that was made. It's like a bonsai tree, and you can go all the way back to the 1920s, 30s was planted, and you can kind of see how that vine was trained, how it grew, and I think that's pretty cool.
It's really special, and I think people think of Napa Valley as this sort of new Disney World-esque place, but we forget, like, there are places in Napa Valley that literally, you can walk through history from like the early 1900s. Yeah. And I think certainly being in Rutherford, especially where you are on the eastern bench or western bench, I always do this wrong. You would think as a sommelier that like I know the difference between east and west, and yet I confuse it all the time. The western bench of Rutherford, you are in really great company with some other older vines. Do you feel like Rutherford is just a place that's been a little bit more untouched, or do you feel like that is just a place where like older vines can exist a little bit more fruitfully?
I just think Rutherford is the vineyard center of Napa Valley. So if you think of, it is the really the center of mass anyway, as it is. It's kind of right in the middle of the valley. But it's historically been that like vineyard center, where I think of Oakville as being like the winery center. That's where you have the big, beautiful wineries and the art and that when you have in Rutherford, it's just always been wine. I mean, always been vineyard centric, right? So you have some of the oldest vineyards. We've got right next to us, J.J. Cohen estate, which has Cabernet from 1945, which I think is some of the oldest Cabernet in California for sure.
Wine geeks out there will know J.J. Cohen as the Scarecrow Vineyard.
Exactly. Thank you. Yep. And then we've got Inglenook just to the north of us, and that is 1879, like one of the most historic wine estates that we have in California. And then you've got Bella Oaks that used to be, a part of the Heights repertoire. So it's really, and George III, and you've got all these just really beautiful, cool, old vineyards. And I think that's what sets Rutherford apart. And the reason why the West Bench is kind of so special is a couple things. It's obviously a lot of these alluvial fans, which create this really nice, well-drained soil that the vines have to struggle through. And they make these really concentrated and powerful compounds and flavors. But the other thing that people don't often talk about is the West Bench was planted first because that's where the sun hits the ground first in the morning. So back in the old days when you didn't have frost protection, you didn't have sprinklers, wind machines, the sun would hit the West Bench first, and that would warm everything up. And that might be the difference between 1 or 2 degrees of a vineyard surviving a frost or not. Yeah. So this was the place that was planted first and has kind of the most history.
Well, we're super grateful for you and your family being such great stewards of the land. It's important, I think, in a wine growing region like Napa Valley to have those who really pay attention to it and understand the importance of those vines and, are ultra careful when they're on tractors and trying not to mow them over. So that's that's a good thing. I want to not shift gears, but I want to pull anyone who's going to be drinking with us into the conversation by way of the wine we have. So if you are part of the Wine Access Unfiltered Podcast Wine Club, we are, of course, drinking Zinfandel, as you might imagine. So we've got the Dancing Zinfandel. This is not coming from Napa Valley. This is coming from what I would argue is probably a more famous place for Zinfandel in the Dry Creek Valley over in Sonoma. In a lot of ways, I wouldn't call this like ground zero because you certainly have some older vines that are still existing up in Lodi. But Dry Creek is really one of these places that Zinfandel has sort of become synonymous with. Certainly, Ravenswood is one of the places that, utilize Dry Creek Valley. And this, since we were talking about old vines, is coming from vines that are somewhere between 20 and 80 years old. They also have a little bit of Petit Verdot in here, a little bit of Carignan. And that Carignan is coming from 145-year-old vines. So not too shabby. And I think, in some ways you can taste it in this glass. Zinfandel, we've been talking about it a little bit as a single variety. And I like that you touched on the fact that earlier in the Morisoli history, you guys were blending it. And Zinfandel traditionally was a grape that you blended. It was one of these varieties that could be shipped all over the world. It could be really nicely blended, but it really wasn't until some of these guys in the late 70s and 80s started looking at it as a grape that could be produced as a single varietal expression. And since then, we've seen a lot of fantastic producers using Zinfandel in this way, creating these single vineyard expressions, which you're doing with the Plinios block. And then, continuing to maybe add a little bit of Petit Verdot or a little bit of Carignan here and there. But I think when you smell this wine, at least to me, like it does smell distinctly California. Like it can't be from anywhere else. Literally, it could not be from anywhere else. It has that rich ripeness to it. It's really lovely and spicy. And then you taste it, and it's got this tension, this nerviness. It's juicy, it's fruity, it's spicy. It tastes like fall. And I kind of want a pumpkin spice latte on the side, frankly. But here we are.
Nice. No, this is beautiful. Thanks, Amanda, for saying this to us.
Yeah.
Just initially pouring it. Beautiful, like purple ruby. It's got the signature Zin color, which I really love. And then just that smell, like I wrote down balance and freshness as like the first things that I kind of noted from it. And it's got that redness and that cherry that I really dig, that is different from what you see some Zinfandels producing, is that like really dark, jammy notes, which I don't get any of that in here. And I really appreciate that because it's more authentic, right? It's true to the grape. And Zinfandel is like California's heritage grape. Like that is original to California. Well, not original to California, but it was one of the first that was planted here. And to me, that is like history in a bottle.
Yeah. It doesn't, in the way that like, when we produce Cabernet Sauvignon in California, oftentimes we're comparing it to like Bordeaux, or if we produce Chardonnay, we're comparing it to Burgundy. But like Zinfandel, there really isn't another benchmark. Like you really do think of it as a grape that's like, it's not, as you said, it's not from California, but it really has become, it's home here. I think also, not that the bottle like tells a story, but like I do think when you see Zinfandels in this shaped bottle, it should sort of allude to the fact that like it is probably not going to be rich and jammy. Like I think a Burgundy bottle sort of suggests that like it might be leaning a little bit on the lighter side. This is certainly not a light wine, but sometimes that can be true. I like Zinfandel more than I used to, but I'm curious what your feelings are. Is this a grape that you enjoy? Is it a grape that you're like only in the right circumstances?
No,
is there food like
my favorite?
It's your favorite?
Like, oh my God, absolutely. Yeah, it's like pizza. It's good when it's bad, and it's good when it's good. It's so.
I don't feel that way about pizza.
We can agree to disagree. But no, I absolutely love it. I think Zinfandel is like my favorite, and I think especially for an old vine site, again, the things that those vines had to do to stick around and stay in the ground and stay planted, like that's pretty cool.
It is cool.
And also, what I appreciate is having that blend. So Zinfandel traditionally had been blended a lot with different varietals to kind of make that site special. And I think like you said about this wine, it's got a couple different components in it, and that's what gives it this complexity and all these different layers to it, which I appreciate. And I know like in Plinios block, there's like 9 different varietals there. So there's Zinfandel as the base of fruit. There's Carignan, which adds a little spice to it. There's Alicante Boucher, which adds color because that's a Centurier grape, which just has that red flesh. There's Syrah, there's Petite Syrah, which kind of add the bones and structure. And in our vineyard, there's a little bit of black muscat. So you get that like nose and that lift from the muscat. And I think, to which extent this is true, the old timers decided to plant those different varietals in percentages that kind of showed off the site the best. And I don't know if that's a little bit of lore or not, but I do think if they wanted more color, they'd plant more Alicante. If they wanted more nose, they'd do more black muscat, and they'd figure out what worked with that site. And I think as these clones made it around Napa or even California, they kind of tweaked it and found out what worked best. So, like we always talk about, you're blending the wine in the vineyard, old school Scott style, instead of like we do today with everything is blending it, picking it separately, fermenting it separately.
In a trial at a table.
Yep. And then blending it at the table. So, it's much less scientific.
It was a little like hedging back then, right? Like they would almost like Bordeaux hedges, right? You're never rarely going to find a single varietal in Bordeaux, red Bordeaux, right? And it's because, Bordeaux was incredibly variable with all of their different vintages. And, some years like Merlot would do better, and some years Cabernet Franc would do better. And if you think back to like when these vineyards were being planted in the early 1900s, it's like they didn't know what was going to be what. They didn't have history to support the decisions that are being made today. So it was like, plant a bunch of different things, figure it out. At that time, people didn't give a hoot whether it was blended or not blended. They just wanted wine for either Sunday or, on a Tuesday morning. They just needed it to taste good, which is, kind of in some ways where I think we might be in part heading back to, maybe not the church stuff so much, but, just like making wine that tastes good,
Yeah. And that brings people together. That's the reason for making wine and drinking wine. And so I did a little Facebook, I'm sure I'm my age, Instagram stalking on the dancing team. But Lauren and Cynthia, like they've figured out that, again, what's important about wine. It's about making good wine that's reasonable, that we can all appreciate and drink. And like, they're having fun with it. And
totally
just looking at their social media, they're doing great, and they're doing it for the right reason. And this is why people want to drink wine, is that you can share it with your friends. You can have people out for parties and like appreciate it for what it is. And it doesn't have to be conspicuously consumed. It doesn't have to be prestige. It just is good wine that brings people together. And to me, that's like what we need more of in the wine industry.
Well, you bring up a good point, and this is why I think Zinfandel is about to have a major resurgence, because I think it is the perfect grape for bringing multiple groups together. You mentioned Lauren and Cynthia, like they're a mother-daughter duo. And when I was out talking a little bit about Ravenswood earlier this year, one of the things that we talked about was the fact that like you can have this wine sit on the table with your dad, with your grandfather, with your mom, with your grandma, with your sister, with your cousin, with your friend, and like it's going to work for like a lot of different people. Like it's one of those wines that I think just, it works a lot of food. It works for a lot of palates, especially when it's made like yours, like this one, where like there's a little bit of edge, there's a little bit of softness, there's a lot of fruit, but there's also like really great structure here. And I think there's very few grapes that have the approachability of Zinfandel that also has, the seriousness if you want to like tuck back and relax with it. And I think as we're thinking about what we're drinking in the next 10 years, this is exactly what we're after. Like, as you said, like these wines that just, you can sit down and chill with. I will mention that last night, my sister and her husband, we did barbecue. So they turned on the smoker at like, 5 or 6 in the morning, threw some pork on there. Do not ask me what they did to it. It was delicious, but it was like slow and low. We had to watch the entire Eagles game to get through to when the pork was going to be done, which, by the way, go Birds, they won. And then when everything was ready, we like added our various different sauces, and I cracked a bottle of Zinfandel with it. And it was so good. I mean, we think about Zinfandel as being a barbecue wine, but to do it in action like that was just chef's kiss.
Perfect. It's a crowd pleaser. Everyone loves it.
Crowd pleaser.
Totally. Yeah. That's why I'm such a fan. So yeah.
What do you eat with it?
Pizza, pasta, anything, Yeah. I'm not specific. So I just think it's, again, can we sit on a porch somewhere and just drink this and enjoy it? And I love wine with food, but I also love being able to sit and drink something on its own. And this is, and Zinfandel as a whole, but especially this dancing is just a beautiful wine to sit and drink. And you don't need to like pair it with something else. It just goes so well on its own. Some other notes I wrote down. Just that balance, and it's got that the finish on this just goes forever. It is really nice. It is just lasts.
It is really nice.
Kind of glycerin, salinity at the end, and the acidity is balanced out with the minerality. I love it. I think it's great. It's, like you said, the tannins are really well resolved, and it's not like it's not too sharp. It's just really well rounded, and I mean, it's a great thing to be able to just bring out.
I would like to know, now that you're sitting here in your very beautiful vineyard, which, by the way, like, you look so at home here. I know you are at home, but like, it makes me so happy, but also so jealous at the same time, just to see you there, just enjoying this beautiful view in Rutherford. But how was harvest? I mean, we're basically through it. I know there was a rain event last week that everyone was it earlier this week, last week? Everyone was freaking out about.
Yep, it was last Monday. So we got everything off just before the rain. Like last couple hours, we had finished picking for Gallo and Schrader, who are usually our two last picks. And it was perfect timing. The grapes were ready. Had a lot of great hang time this year. The flavors all were really well developed. And I think everyone's super happy. The color that we've seen this year in all the different wines and wineries we sell to has been really, really beautiful. And I don't know if that's just a factor of a little extra time on the vine and really moderate temperatures, but so I think there's going to be some great wines. We've been really lucky, like 23, 24, 25, all have been like some pretty stellar years so far.
Were you stressed at all?
I'm always stressed during harvest.
No, you're not. You don't seem like somebody that's stressed.
Harvest is like everyone's, going full tilt. You're getting a little bit of sleep here and there. And, people are frustrated and you're just trying to make it through. But again, I think harvest, and that's the time when your relationships really are important. And that's one thing that I've always said is common between the other things I do. So in the Army or in the fire department, and especially also in wine, relationships are probably the most important thing because they'll get you through the tough parts. And when you need to shuffle a pick or you need to adjust some tonnage somewhere, and if you have a good relationship with winemakers and those vineyard reps, it really makes your life a lot easier. And we're super lucky to have good folks that we work with on a day-to-day basis. And glad for that. So having that makes harvest go a lot easier. And we have a really good team of folks that come up mostly from Modesto. Some folks that live here in Napa that help us pick. And we have about 12 guys that come up for about 3 weeks. And that's what it takes us to get through our about 50-acre vineyard. And we jam through it, and everyone has a great time, and we go home with a little extra cash in their pocket, and life is good.
When I am there for harvest, one of my favorite things is to like get up super early and like walk down to the coffee station and just like try to chat with anyone who will talk to me at 6 o'clock in the morning. So what, if any, is your morning routine during harvest?
So usually we start about 3 a.m. is a normal start time. So I'll get up about as late as I can, 2:35, throw a quick coffee or a quick espresso on, and then hop in the truck and go. And then we're off to the races. So 3, the guys are like going, they're like ready to go. So hop in. I'm usually driving the tractor or pulling leaves, and we just start getting after it. We'll pick. With 12 guys, we will pick a trailer, which is 2 tons. We'll pick a 2-ton trailer in about 45 minutes. So it's violent. It was like boxes being thrown and tractors like moving, driving left and right. And you've got just a lot of people with sharp knives going every which way. Yeah. So you got to kind of pay attention.
And like pitch black.
Yeah. And very dark. If it's got headlamps. So we do that till like usually 10 or 11 is kind of like the stopping point. Starts getting a little warmer. And then we make a run to Azteca to get burritos for the guys, bring them out. Then we take a lunch break. And we actually did Buster's this year for lunch, and the guys loved it.
Buster's up in Calistoga?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I've never been to that place. Is it good?
We tried it. It's great. It's so good. Tri-tip sandwiches are just off the chain. Actually, a tri-tip and this end would be like money. It'd go really well.
Fire, yeah.
So we should try that. But it's always fun because we'll try to change up the lunch here and there. And one year my dad said, well, let's try Chipotle. Let's see if we can like the guys
Chipotle.
Like, Chipotle, right? And
get out of here.
Okay. So we did the Chipotle catering and just asked the guys if they wanted it. And they were like, yeah, we've never really had it, heard of it. we did Chipotle, and they were like, "Yep, nope, never again. Nope, only Taco Azteca." Just Taco Azteca. So anyway, that's the best.
I mean, no shade to Chipotle, but like it's not Azteca. It doesn't. It's good for like, you know, my white self over here on the East Coast, where like you can't find a good avocado within anywhere. But no, if I had the choice between Chipotle and like, it's like not. It's not even a choice. Like, it's just a ridiculous question. Like, what are we talking about here?
So we in the attempt to change it up, we realized stick with what works, and that's Azteca and Buster's. So, but anyway, so that'll happen till about 11, and then usually we'll be doing some subsoil ripping. So then I'll break off for ripping or seeding our cover crop for the rast of the day till like 4 or 5. And go home and try to catch up on the admin work and the emails and logging all the weigh tags and all that. So it's busy. Yeah.
I don't not recommend people be there during harvest, but I'm also like, it's not what you think it's going to be. So just go with the mindset. Like if you're going to be there during harvest, it's amazing, but it is so labor intensive. And if you've ever been out on an actual pick, first of all, to your point, it is in the middle of the night. So you're sleep deprived, number one. It's pitch black because there's no lights in Napa Valley in general. So like it'll be pitch black until you get to the vineyard site. And then when you get to the vineyard site, there's usually like either headlamps or like big, like they almost look like football field lights kind of like going over. But it's still very, very dark and it's freezing cold. It is so effing cold in the middle of the night in Napa Valley. People do not realize how cold it is. So like this idea that it's going to be this like beautiful California vineyard movie experience, like remove that from your brain. It is nothing like that. And I've only done it a handful of times. I cannot imagine doing it night after night after night.
Yep. 100%. It gets very Groundhog Day-ish and it is, but you know, you're like filthy, you're covered with grape juice and you just keep going and and then every once in a while, what I really do like doing, we don't really host a lot of people, but every once in a while we'll have a customer come by and we'll do some old vine study, which is really fun because that's where we go out to Plinio's block. We take a bottle, open it in the vineyard, and then you try each of the different varieties that go into that basically field blend in the vineyard. And that to me is really cool. And you can only do that for 1 or 2 months out of the year. But that's a special thing to be able to do. And then if we're really at the right time of year, we'll pull like a fermentation sample. So then to be able to see the grapes and then what they turn into in 2 or 3 weeks with a fermentation sample, and then what the finished product is out of the bottle is pretty cool. It's educational too. And you get to teach everyone about, the old school viticulture and then the new school way that we do things today. So have that counterpoint.
What do you think is ahead for your like family's future? Do you think you guys will continue making your own wine? Do you think you'll continue to sell grapes?
I think so. I think the business model for us will always remain the same as we sell grapes primarily. And then the wine that we make is sub 500 cases per year. So about 225 of Plinio's, which is the max amount that an 1.5 acre vineyard can give. And then about 250 or so of Cabernet. And that's it. And we're happy with that. We have a lot of long-term contracts and a lot of wineries who have been here for a long time. So we don't want to, we're not going to cut anybody out and we're just going to keep doing that. But our label is really fun to be able to bring people out to understand the vineyard a little bit more. We'll have a critic out. We'll be able to do a horizontal of all producers in a given year. And to me, that's fun. And that's kind of exciting for people to see. So, that's the goal. And I don't think we want to, change anything any more than we're already doing. So, and I don't have time to go out on the road and sell. So people come to us.
No, I think you guys are crushing it. I'm so excited genuinely so excited for all of the success that you've had under this particular label. Like we've all known the Morisoli vineyard for years, but like, I think even in conversation with, collectors and friends who love wine, it's just like, if there's one place people are really excited about right now, it's Morisoli and the fact that you guys are making your own wine because it is such a heritage site and it is a place that I think deserved to have a spotlight in the way that you guys are giving it. Not that the other wineries weren't doing that. It certainly isn't to disparage them, but it's just different when it's your own. Like it's different when it's your own baby. You get to raise it from the start. So.
Exactly. So you see the work that goes into it. And you see all the hands that touch that bottle before it gets to someone's table, and that's pretty special. And I really resonate with with what Lauren and Cynthia are doing, because hey, that's mother-daughter team, and I'm working with my pops and my mom, and doing the wine thing, and that's like cool, and people like that. That is an ideal way to grow grapes and make a living. And out there in Dry Creek Valley, I mean, it's beautiful. It is like a little idealistic, tiny valley up there. And you drive through that valley and you see all these ranch houses and these old vineyards. And it's kind of this hidden gem that doesn't always get all of the attention that I think it deserves. But when you have wine from there, you realize like why that's special. And I hope we can maintain that history.
I think so. And shout out to Dry Creek Valley General Store. That's what it's called. There's like one business basically in Dry Creek Valley. Well, that's maybe not true, but there's a little shop there. I'll put it in the description. But they do the best sandwiches. It is, to me, it's the best. I'm a Philadelphia girl, so I love my hoagies. I love my all things on bread. It was so good. And so if you're out there kind of driving around, there was a few places to taste as well. You got to stop here and grab yourself a sandwich. I know you're full of recommendations and I want to get to those in a second, but I want to know what your favorite Zinfandel you've ever had was. It's not your own or the one that we're drinking today.
Favorite Zinfandel. The one that started me off, I'll give you two answers to this. The one that really started my love for Zinfandel was Elise Winery. And those were our neighbors. So Jake and sister Elise and their parents, Ray and Nancy, lived right here, actually the same house that I'm at, which they rented from my folks.
That's cool.
And they made that old Plinios block from 1987 all the way till 2018. And that was always just like such a beautiful wine. And man, talk about age worthy, like those Zinfandels, I'm still opening ones from the 90s, 93, 94, 95, 96, and they are beautiful. Because when you pick them at the right time, they've got the acidity, they've got the legs to like last, and those wines hold up. They hold up just to me as well as a cab does. So I think that's super special. So that was what the wine that first kind of turned me on to Zinfandel as something really special. And then my current favorite would probably be the wine that Robert Bialy makes. They make a single vineyard from Morisoli. And we started that in 2021. And they just do such an authentic job with really quality old vines. And they kind of have the cream of the crop of all the old vineyards in Napa. So if you want to know where those, again, pre-prohibition vineyards are, go to Bialy and see where they're sourcing from. And you'll find some really cool historic vineyards that they do a nice job of representing well.
Yeah, Bialy's killer. Biale. They're famous for making the black chicken wine. But yeah, those are always wines. What a story. I know you have to go to the winery to hear the story, but yeah, those are wines that we always had consistently on the list of press. I wouldn't say the Zinfandel section was like stocked. Although we had like a killer collection of old Ravenswood because Joel Peterson has a ton of it. And so he sold us some back in the day. But, to your point, you had mentioned like the ageability of these Zinfandels. People don't think of Zinfandel as being an age-worthy wine. And I think a lot of that stems from this idea that like a lot of the Zinfandels that most of the world is seeing are more of these like grocery store brands that probably shouldn't be aged for, a longer period of time. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them. It's just like they're not ageable. But some of them, I would argue the one that we're drinking today, definitely the Plinios, Ravenswood 3.0 that's coming out now, certainly the Turleys and a whole bunch of others, Bialys, these Elise, these are all wines that are super, super age-worthy when they're made in this style and in this way and coming from these heritage sites. So don't write off Zinfandel when it's young for not being ageable. And if you see some of these older bottles out in the wild, they're a steal. In fact, one of my favorite wines that I had this year was the 97 Turley Dogtown Vineyard Zinfandel. And I had it just before the Super Bowl as sort of an homage to Saquon Barkley or someone else.
Nice.
I forget who. Yeah. These are sort of rapid fire prompts. So we talked about old vines, but overrated or underrated old vine designation?
Mostly overrated. When you see them on a label, because I don't think there's no way to tell unless you know the producer and you know what their like values are. I don't think old vine means anything. So just you've got to know who you're buying from and know what their philosophy is on it, because I mean every grocery store you see gnarly vines or old vines, and it's just so hard to tell what's what. For the average consumer to cut through the marketing dollars is pretty challenging, and that's why having folks like you is valuable to kind of help cut through some of that.
Yeah, and I think to your point, most of the, although now that I'm looking at it, this one doesn't say it specifically, but most of the time, if it says old vine on it, they will probably quantify that in some way with the actual age of the vines. Like on the back will be a story, or on the website there will be a story. Like you will be able to find the actual age of the vines, and if it's not more than like, we'll call it 30. I know 50 was sort of your designation, but we'll call it more than 30. Then like it's probably that, probably a marketing scam.
And here's the thing, Zinfandel has been beat up. It's been beat up for so long. And that's why I'm so excited for this, like, again, like you said, like resurgence, because it had just been such a bulk wine that people overcropped or had just, made in this really jammy powerhouse style that, may have worked for some people back when palates were different and people wanted that, like, man, like punch me in the face with a wine. But
totally.
I think now people are coming around to more nuance and more unique part of wine and terroir. And the three things that I think are the most important in wine is the site. So being true to the site, being true to the grape or the varietal, and being true to the vintage. And I think those three key things really are what's going to make a wine that you feel good about sharing, good about drinking, and that's going to be a hit for the team.
Yeah, it's a little, as you were saying it, I was thinking it's a little like Oaky Chardonnay, right? Like there was a time and a place for it. It was certainly a fad for a while. It doesn't mean it completely goes away, and it certainly doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it if that is your style of wine.
Exactly.
I would say the same for a jammy Zinfandel. Like when I first started in wine, I loved a big jammy Zinfandel, and I think it was just a function of my palate acclimating to wine, and there's nothing wrong with that. If that's what you're enjoying, you should continue enjoying that. Just know that like there's many styles of Zinfandel out there, and eventually maybe you might start enjoying a different style like the one we're having today. But if you don't, that's also fine too.
And that's why I would say Napa really does have room, and Sonoma too. That has room for everybody. Like if you want that entry experience, that sounds bad. If you want that like powerful wine, if you want that like different, you can get it, right? And then like that's great. It brings people in, and then they can learn about more nuanced stuff. But what you're getting. The larger companies always will have that consistency, and you'll know what you're going to get. But I think what's fun about the smaller family projects is they're a little more true to the vintage. So you might have a lot more differences between the two, and that's okay because that's what makes it special. So.
Well, and the larger companies are making those wines in the style that they're making them for a reason, right? And it's because there's a lot of people who enjoy that. So it's not that you're not in good company. It's just always good to know that like there's other things out there. And in the same, we've likened wine to so many different industries, right? In the same way that like, I can like McDonald's just as much as I can love a great 3 Michelin starred meal. Like they both have their valid days and times and ways for me to enjoy that. Some people might love, we just did an episode on fashion, right? Some people really might love their big loud labels, and some people might like something that's a little bit more quiet luxury. And like all of these things are totally fine to enjoy. Totally. You just, Agreed. I think it's just a function of understanding that there's not one that's better than the other. There's just your palate and figuring out what works for you.
Yes.
And so that's why we're talking about Zinfandel in this way, because I think there's a lot of drinkers out there who maybe didn't love really loud Zinfandel, who maybe liked a quieter style. And I think the point of this episode is to identify the fact that these styles are starting to come back again, and there's going to be room for that. And there's going to be people like me and Chris that are going to champion that and say like, hey, look, we have a whole rainbow of Zinfandel. Isn't that cool?
Yeah. And folks like Tegan, Bobby Ollie, like Officer.
Oh my God. Guys, how we not? Yeah.
They're all like champions Zinfandel, and they have the Historic Vineyard Society is showing that off. And we want old vines to stay in the ground. We don't want to have more houses or more more of those vineyards come out. And we see that all the time with the old vineyards get ripped out for, new big McMansions. And anyway, to me, that's sad. And I think the more popular and the more wanted we can make these older vine wines, can only be better for the community and have, like in St. Helena, when you go walk in the library vineyard, like that's a treasure, right? And the folks that live there, you can walk your dog in there and you can go for a run. And it's just a really cool asset for the local community to have. And
totally.
Anyway, there's my pitch for old vines. So
no, it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
I keep meaning to bring up Bedrock because we've talked about Ravenswood and
sure.
We've had, I think Bedrock was part of the wine club maybe last year. I think it was the Heritage that we included, and another just great champion for old vines, Zinfandel, both single varietal and blends. I'm such a huge fan of what those guys do. So like, I think when you find producers like that, that speak to you and understand this, that, Zinfandel can be a rock star. Like those are the guys I want to hang out with. Yeah. Wine that you're drinking right now that's not from Napa. That's not this wine either.
I mean, Sandlands.
Ooh.
100%. Yeah.
All right. I
100%.
love a good Tegan wine. Yes.
Yeah. He's such a rock star. And like, again, what an authentic guy who makes like really beautiful wine at a great price point. Like you can get, if you, when you get on the list,
if you can get
30, 35, $40 for like really, really beautifully made wines from Contra Costa and Amador and Lodi, and just places that that he knows, because Tegan's like driving around. I think he drives like 25 hours a day scouting different vineyards. But
I think you're right. I think that is the number.
He's just always on the road.
He's the best person to run into during harvest.
Totally. Yeah.
Because he knows so much, because he's been so many places. He's like, what do you harvest where? I've been all up and down the state of California just today. So what do you want to know?
100%. But yeah, talking about some like off the wall varietals and some cool, so you can bring those out to friends and be like, hey, check this Assyrtiko out. And like, wait, what is that? And you can kind of showcase some cool stuff. So 100% Sandlands.
Sandlands. What about, do you drink anything that's not California?
Pacifico or Negroni.
Pacifico.
It's not California.
How often is it a Pacifico over wine?
More often than not. Actually, sparkling water more likely. It's
like what's your percentage ratio?
Oh God, that's a good question. I haven't done the math. What would be something that's fun? Like Italian varietals like Nebbiolo. If I'm at Cook in St. Helena, like a good Nebbiolo from something that's on the Cook list is always like pretty rock star, good wine. It takes a minute. It can be a little.
They carried a nice list there.
Harsh, but man, when you get some air on those old Nebbiolos, they're just really nice, and it goes well with that food.
Yeah. What
about you? What are you excited about?
Oh, I drink everything. What am I excited about? Well, I mean, I was just at the New York Wine Experience, so my palate is shot. But what was actually really fun to drink there was most of the producers brought older vintages with, between 10 and 20 years. And I thought the most interesting thing was very few of them brought the flashy vintages. So we were drinking some like 14s from Bordeaux. We were drinking like 09s from Napa.
11s maybe.
Yeah, like none of them were like really flashy vintages in the way that like 7 would have been, or like 10 from Bordeaux. So I've been drinking that. But then I also afterwards, have you heard of Cocodoc, this restaurant in New York that they specialize in fried chicken and champagne? Actually, there's a show on Apple TV right now called Chasing Michelin Stars or Chasing Stars or something. And the very first episode, Cocodoc is featured in it because they're chasing a Michelin star. It's the same team as Cote, COTE. That's open in New York and Miami, whatever. Anyway, their shtick is fried chicken and champagne. And so whenever I go there, I basically they hand me the list and I look through it. I shake my head and I look up at the somm and I'm like, I don't know why you handed me this list. Like there's zero chance that I'm going to pick something from it. So you just do it. And it's my favorite thing to do. And so that's kind of what I've been doing a lot of lately, is just saying like, here's my budget, pick a wine, surprise me. And so that's what I've been drinking lately, is just a lot of surprises that songs pick for me.
Yeah, like let's learn something. And that's what's so cool about wine is like like, I don't know. Like you're the one
Yeah.
as a som at that restaurant who knows the list and who's
Yeah.
like tasted through stuff and like teach me something cool. And like, I think that's like a fun experience you can have at dinner with friends and, learn something new about a region you don't know anything about. And I think that's one thing wine, I think, especially, in the more near term, is people are going outside of those normal boundaries and like, South America or, like Portugal or like cooler, unique
Totally.
Greece, it has really cool, like, again, similar, really neat histories that you can pick up for a lot less, a little easier on the wallet to get the same
I think
experience.
Argentina is a crazy place to get wines right now. In fact, I just sent a friend of mine the Fossil Chardonnay from Argentina that Zaccardi does. That's so good. I think it's like $60. It tastes like Premier Grand Cru white Burgundy. It is so freaking good. So I'm long on Argentina. I'm still long on I think bubbles just keep getting better and better around the world. Like I still love my champagne, but I'm really excited about all of the other sparklings that are coming out of UK, that are coming out of Oregon, that are coming out of even the Finger Lakes is like crushing on some good bubbles. Like it's crazy. It's really fun to see. And I was talking to someone the other day about some of these other wine regions, and they were like, how do we move the industry forward? And I was like, honestly, I think it's via other wine regions across the country. Like I think the more winemakers from, more of these noteworthy places that go and spend some time in like Minnesota or Michigan or Pennsylvania, like either spend some time or lay some vineyards down or something. Like I think the more wine growing we have in those areas, the better off we're going to be as a wine drinking society in the United States. And then that in turn is how we get people to other places and get them excited about wine again.
Yeah, absolutely. And the experience is what people like us want. We want to go out just and you're not selling wine on an email anymore. Like people want to come out, they want to see the vines, they want to do like some experience, whether that be like seeing the picking in action or like going and doing an old vine study or like tasting different varietals or a 4-wheeler ride around the vineyard or a Jeep ride or something to make that experience. So that way, every time you drink that wine at home, now you're like immediately transported back to that vineyard.
Yeah.
Every time that I open like a Plinio's block, like I feel like it's harvest morning in the middle of that old vineyard, and I imagine it's the same with the dancing wine that, when you drink that, that's probably what harvest smells like. In the middle of the Russell's ranch out there. So
no, I think about sitting in the back of your truck running around the vines when I drink Morisoli, which is, I think, exactly the way you'd want it.
Excellent.
Very last question and a little plug for your podcast. Who was your dream guest for 9-1 Wine?
God, I mean, you were the dream guest. We were done. I don't think there's anything else to go.
No, get out of here. I'm not your dream guest.
I mean, we did ask Thomas Keller, and he respectfully declined. But he would be a really fun guy to talk to. I did listen to him speak with Michael Solacci at a grapegrowers event, and just listening to those two kind of go back and forth was really cool. And just talking about like, again, quality and experience and what makes like brands successful and how kind of what their pathways to that success was. It was really cool. So.
It's a really fun podcast, and it's a great. There's some really good banter in there. I love that you guys go through the police log, the whole episode, and just talk about some of the. Because if you've ever lived or spent time in Napa Valley, specifically in St. Helena, the St. Helena police log is just. It's a real chef's kiss of a newspaper section.
It's very low production quality, but high authenticity. So
yes, perfect description of it. I can't thank you enough for being here. I am sitting here with like a pretty good view, but like it's been really nice to look at yours the entire time. So thank you for that.
There we are. That's that's Mount St. John back there, which is my favorite place in the whole world. My favorite mountain.
It's epic. Cool. It's beautiful. Any plugs we should include?
We're morisolivineyard.com, and that's where you can see all the latest happenings and check the vineyard out and see who we're selling grapes to and who makes different Morisoli Vineyard wines. And this is the Plinio's block. We'll show that real quick. So that's it. Oh, nice. Right. Little 1.5 acre guy right in the middle. Thank you again, Amanda, for everything you're doing and for bringing wine to the people
No, thank you. This is awesome.
And for being at all the events, like from Premiere to the New York Wine Experience to the Bahamas or wherever is next for you.
That's right. Got to get those miles.
Heck yeah. So
get the miles, get people drinking. Thank you so much for everyone listening who was not drinking with us. This is your cue to join the Wine Access Unfiltered Podcast Wine Club. It's $120 plus tax, but including shipping every single month. I pick the wines alongside the wine team. And then you do get 10% off all of your Wine Access purchases. So all the information to join is in the description below. I encourage you to check it out. And I encourage you to check out this podcast in video form if you haven't done so already. The view of the Morisoli Vineyard is worth it. I promise you, it's worth it. And you get to see Chris's shining face, which is never a bad thing. Thank you guys so much for listening, watching. All the things you need to know about Chris, including where to find his podcast, are also in the description below. Until then, drink more Zin, and I will see you guys later. Cheers.
Thanks, Amanda.